All right, today we're jumping into a really tricky idea from one of Christianity's most influential thinkers, John Calvin. We're going to unpack a paradox that sits right at the very heart of his work. So let's get right into it with the central question Calvin was wrestling with. It's a paradox that seems to pit two fundamental Christian beliefs against each other. On one hand, you have the idea that salvation is a totally free gift of grace, but on the other, the belief that it was earned, purchased by the work of Christ. So, which one is it? Can it be both? To really get a handle on Calvin's answer, we've got to first understand the problem he was trying to solve. And the tension really boils down to one single and, for some, a very controversial word. You see, Calvin noticed that a lot of people back then got really hung up on this idea that Christ merited salvation for us. To them, saying something was earned just felt wrong. It sounded like it cheapened the whole concept of a totally free gift from God. It felt like it was turning pure mercy into some kind of business transaction.
So here's the real rub, right? How can both of these statements possibly be true at the same time? If it's a completely free gift, how could it also have been earned? And if it was earned, well, how can we honestly call it a free gift? This is the knot that Calvin sets out to untangle.
So how in the world does Calvin get out of this jam? Well, his approach isn't to pick a side or throw one idea out. Instead, he completely reframes the relationship by thinking about cause and means.
And here is his brilliant solution. He introduces a hierarchy. He argues that one concept doesn't cancel the other out. It actually serves it. Christ's merit doesn't stand in opposition to God's grace. It flows from it. It works on its behalf. It's not a competition. It's like a chain of command.
And to back this up, Calvin actually pulls from an even earlier thinker, Augustine. The point he's making is that the starting point for all of this isn't Christ's work, but God's eternal plan. In this view, Christ himself is the ultimate expression of grace. He's the fountain from which it flows to everyone else.
Okay, this right here lays out the whole sequence perfectly. It all kicks off with step 1, God's good pleasure. That's the ultimate cause, the source of it all. From there, step 2, Christ is appointed as the mediator to carry out the plan. Then step 3 is where Christ's merit comes in. His obedience is what actually accomplishes the plan. And the result, step 4, is that our salvation is secured. So you see, merit doesn't compete with grace. It's the very tool God designed to bring it about.
Okay, so that's the logic behind it. But what's the evidence? Well, Calvin digs right into the scriptures to make his case for this relationship between grace and merit.
Calvin points to something he calls an ineffable mystery, basically something you can't quite put into words, and it's this. How could God's constant, unwavering love for humanity exist at the exact same time as his righteous anger against human sin? Somehow, those two things had to be reconciled.
Now, this passage from 1 John is absolutely critical, and it all comes down to this one word, propitiation. It's a fancy word, but it just means an act that satisfies or turns away wrath. For Calvin, this is proof that God's love came first, that love is what provided the means, Christ's sacrifice, to deal with the wrath that our sin deserved.
And this verse really drills down into the how. How does this reconciliation actually work? It suggests this incredible kind of transfer, where the sinless Christ takes on sin, so that sinful people could, in turn, take on his righteousness. And that brings us to maybe the most powerful piece of this whole puzzle. The concept of a great exchange, where Christ essentially acts as our substitute.
So here, Calvin, and he's following the Apostle Paul on this, draws this incredible parallel. He argues that just like Adam's disobedience had this ripple effect of negative consequences for all of humanity, Christ's perfect obedience has a positive saving effect for many. It's nothing short of a cosmic reversal.
This table breaks it down so clearly. It's like a divine balance sheet. On our side of the ledger, we brought sin, disobedience, a curse, a debt. But then Christ provided the opposite for each one, obedience, righteousness, a blessing, and the payment for that debt. He took everything we deserved so we could receive everything he deserved.
You know, it's interesting. The Bible often uses the language of money to talk about this. In the Gospel of Mark, for example, Jesus says he came to give his life as a ransom for many. This just hammers home the idea that a real cost was involved. A debt was settled. A price was paid.
So the crucial point here is that Christ didn't just die for us. In this view, he took upon himself the very penalty that we were supposed to face. The punishment that would have brought us peace with God was instead laid squarely on him.
All right, Let's put all the pieces together and see how these two ideas that seem to be in conflict, a free gift and an earned merit, actually form a single, unified picture in Calvin's mind.
When you boil it all down, in Calvin's view, it's actually pretty straightforward. God's grace is the ultimate reason, the why, behind our salvation. And Christ's merit is the specific, righteous method, the how, that God chose to make it happen. The how always serves the why.
And Calvin really drives home the point that none of this was for Christ's own benefit. He points to Jesus saying he sanctifies himself, or sets himself apart for a holy purpose, for their sake. It's like Calvin says Christ in a way just forgot himself to devote his entire being to saving us.
And just like that, the paradox dissolves. Grace and merit aren't enemies at all. They're two sides of the very same coin. The most free, unearned gift imaginable was secured for us at the highest possible price, a price paid in full by Christ.
So that leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. In our world, we think of merit as something we achieve for ourselves through our own hard work. But Calvin presents this model where the greatest merit ever achieved was done by one person entirely for the benefit of others. It's a profound thought, and it really asks us to reconsider what we think about value, about gifts, and what it truly means to deserve something.